Hello and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Morton, and on this segment, we'll be hearing from a guy whose cancer journey was eased by early detection. He is Chris Melton of Fairfax Station, Virginia, who medically took the bull by the horns and defeated basal cell carcinoma. It's a story we hope you'll like, and more importantly, we hope you'll find it informative and inspirational. So now let's get to it. And Chris, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Hey, Bruce, how you doing? Great to be here today.
Thanks so much, Chris. We want to start off the way we always do, and that's by personalizing you a little bit. So if you would, give us a thumbnail sketch of your past, where you're from. I think you have a lot of addresses, as do I. What you've done for work during your life, and what you like to do for leisure when you're not working.
Sure. I kind of run the gamut. It's all over the place. I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, grew up in Nairobi, Kenya, and Oporto, Portugal. And then my parents came back to the U.S. and got indoctrinated here and learned to play baseball and basketball and football like every other young-blooded American, and really enjoyed that experience as well. But and nothing really prepared me for the scare that I got from the diagnosis I received back in 2015. It was a challenge because there is a history of skin cancer in my family. Being a young guy, you just don't take this into account when you're running around at the beach and doing all these things out in the sunshine all day long. And I decided I'd go get something checked out that I had not had checked in a while. It had grown a little bit. It had changed colors. Like, all right, it's time to go check it out. Make sure being an athlete as a young man, and even as an older man, I'm still pretty athletic. It was hard to set that ego aside that I was infallible, that I was gonna get something. So I went to my dermatologist and had her check it out, and they did a full body scan of me head to toe, and she said, "It looks suspicious. Let's take a biopsy of it." And got the scalpel out and carved me up a little bit. Nothing too painful, nothing too bad. The worst part of it was when she said, "I think it's cancer," and then left the room. And I went, "What?" I thought I had melanoma, and I started thinking all kinds of scary things as a result. So with that, she finally came back into the room and said, I guess I should have prefaced that a little bit better and should have explained a little bit more by saying that it's basal cell. What I think it is basal cell carcinoma as opposed to melanoma. And that was a huge relief, at least initially. But still, you're waiting. You don't know for sure and until the biopsy is completed. So went through that about 3-4 years ago, and that was the first incident I had of it.
Now, Chris, I want to walk this back a little bit. You had mentioned this male athletic ego piece, and then you also mentioned that you went ahead and went to the dermatologist to get checked.
Yep.
In between those junctures, was there any indecision on your part? Were you nudged by any external source to go to the dermatologist, or was it an easy call?
It was not an easy call. You're right. Again, with that ego of being a young athlete on into an older athlete, you just feel like you're infallible. I got pushed a little bit by my wife and my dad, who had some basal cell, precancerous basal cell stuff removed from his nose. And my grandfather, who had a scare with melanoma, he'd had melanoma back in the early 1970s, got it removed and ended up it didn't metastasize, so he was very lucky. So with that prompting, after I had the kind of the color change in the tumor on my chest, I said, I think it's probably time to go see somebody. And so I did. And I set up the appointment, scared to death. I walked in there, didn't know what the heck was going to happen. But the dermatologist was just fantastic. Walked me through all of it, other than that initial diagnosis where she said, "You got cancer," and walked out of the room and scared the hell out of me. But other than that, it was actually a fairly easy process from the standpoint of the treatment schedule for it.
Okay, and I want to get to that in a second, but I want to do
Sure.
one more little bit of walking back. You had mentioned a distinction between melanoma and basal cell melanoma. To enlighten us, if you would, for those of us who don't know the difference, what is the difference?
Sure. So melanoma is the scary skin cancer because it tends to metastasize pretty quickly in the body, meaning it'll stay on the skin for a while, but then it'll get into your bloodstream and it can go to other parts of the body, can end up in your lungs or your liver or whatever. There are plenty of people that end up getting liver cancer that's really started as a melanoma. But basal cell is very slow growth. It can happen over years. It can be present on your skin, and you not even know that it's there until you get it, looked at by a physician and diagnosed. The process for removing it's pretty easy, although it can be a little scary too. But and I know you want to get to that in a minute. But that the distinction between the two is that one's kind of slow growth, the other one's pretty aggressive.
Okay, now your dermatologist, at some point, did she point out the range of scenarios? Did she point out a worst case scenario? And if so, what was that?
Well, the worst case scenario was 6 feet under, and I didn't like that scenario at all. But in terms of the likelihood of that, she said, your skin type, your skin's in pretty good shape. You haven't been abusing yourself in the sun. Have you been wearing sunscreen regularly? And I said, yeah, after I reached the age of, 38, 40, in that age range, I was using it more regularly. Before that, I'd go to the beach with my daughter, my wife, whatever. And I'd just get nice glowing red lobster color by the end of the weekend. And that was it. We'd go home, I'd peel and move on. But as I started to get more familiar with this, as I've gotten older, and I'm over 50 now, as I've gotten older and my dad's regaled me with his issues and my grandfather's issues, I said, okay, it's time to stop screwing around. And so I started wearing, and I wear sunscreen every day now. So every day I go out in the sun.
All right. Now, this is probably the least pleasant question of this conversation, but when things did become kind of scary, just how bad was that? Describe what that that sense of fear was like.
Well, I can tell you honestly that I was sitting on my bathroom floor, dreading the call because I knew she was calling me with the results of the biopsy. And I sat there going, please, God, let it not be the melanoma. Let it be basal cell. We can deal with the other stuff. And I don't mind I'm an athlete. I've had knee surgeries and ankle surgeries and all kinds of, and broken arms and wrists and things. So I've done the cast thing. I've done rehab. I get all that part of it. But being faced with your own mortality scared the hell out of me. But that was the lowest moment, was waiting for the call on the distinction, whether it was the melanoma or the basal cell.
During that difficult time while you were waiting for that call, is there anything that served as sort of an external source of strength for you?
I'm not an overly religious guy, but I'm pretty spiritual. And so, I had a conversation with God about, just exactly what it is that I should be doing and not doing. And the messaging came back to me is like, don't worry about it. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. And that gave me a nice sense of peace about it. And I actually was pretty calm when she called finally about an hour later. And that and regular exercise, to be honest with you, getting those endorphins up and getting out helps a lot of that frustration move on. And I can talk a little bit more about some things that I've done that have helped me as well, different breathing techniques. And there's a terrific guy that I'm following now that really helps with that as well. So.
Okay, and we'll get to that in a bit. But now let's move on to the treatment phase of all this. Once a treatment course was determined, what happened?
So when she got back with me, I'd already, when they take the skin graft for the biopsy, they have to suture it shut. So that has to heal first before they'll go back in and remove the basal cell. So what they do is there's a certain type of surgery called Mohs, M-O-H-S, Mohs surgery. And what they do is they come in and they graft around the, it's a different surgeon. It's an actual surgeon. It's a dermatological surgeon. And I went to see her, and she ends up grafting around the area. They kind of highlight it where they think the tumor might end, and they take that graft of skin and then they test the edges of it. And if there's any cells that show up and they do a quick biopsy while I'm still, and they don't knock you out, they give you a local. And then while I'm waiting for that result, they come back in and they say, all right, we've got to cut a little bit more, and they numb you up a little bit more and they trim a little bit more out, and then they suture you shut. And it takes about 4 or 5 weeks before you're fully healed. You can shower within a couple of days and all that stuff, so that's not a big deal. But getting it out, and there are no residual side effects. You don't have to take any medications afterwards. It's just a matter of preventive maintenance going forward, which is putting the sunscreen on your body. That's it.
But some of that sounds kind of painful. At any time, were you hurting? Were you in pain?
A little bit. The pinch from the shot for the local is probably the worst part of it, to be honest with you. I will say this though, as they're suturing you, they cauterize the wound, and so if anybody doesn't know what that means, it means they burn it. They have a little laser that they burn it shut, and that helps seal it, keeps the infections to a minimum. If you've ever seen the movie Three Mules for Sister Sarah with Clint Eastwood, where she lights the arrow on fire and shoves it through his shoulder, that's cauterizing a wound. It wasn't quite that gruesome for me, but the smell, the worst part is smelling your own flesh burning is a little unnerving, to be honest with you. But that's the worst of it, to be honest. And there is not a lot of pain with it, to be perfectly frank.
Okay, so how did your appearance change after the treatment in the two places?
So, I have one on my chest in the middle of my pectoral muscle, and the other one is here on my cheek. You can see the little bit of a scar right there. So I am a little bit Al Pacino working on my scar face there, but the one on my chest looks like I got a bullet wound. In fact, when people ask, I say, yeah, I took a bullet coming over the fence in 1917, and everybody kind of laughs about it. So it's not bad. I would say it's about that big of a round, about a quarter size scar. When they suture it shut, it's flat, and then because it's in such a flexible part of the body, that the scar tissue ends up just stretching out over time, and it's not painful or anything. It's just different looking. That's all.
Was there a juncture, a point in which you felt like you had won this battle? And if so, how did that feel?
Yeah, after the first time on my chest, and that was, again, three and a half years ago, when I had that removed, and that was in 2015. When that was removed, I felt a lot better, a lot more comfortable about where I was with that, knowing that I needed to do preventive maintenance. And then when the one showed up on my face last November of 2019, I said, all right, let's go get it checked. It wasn't any big deal. I'm like, all right, if it's melanoma, right, we'll worry about that when we worry about it. But I want to get when we get it detected and biopsied. Then they took a look at it. She biopsied it, said, yep, it's basal. Go in, see the surgeon again. She went in, trimmed it out, and sutured it up. The worst part about being on the face is having to answer all the questions, because on the chest, nobody knows, right? You're wearing a shirt, walking around, you're going to work, nobody cares. Nobody sees anything. But on your face, everybody has questions about it. And so I just tell them, I said, it was skin cancer. And it actually gives me a nice platform to tell people to use their sunscreen, especially those of us that are pretty fair skinned.
Chris, now sometimes on cancer interviews, we have as guests caregivers, and certain people's cancer journeys require more care than others. Sure. It looked like your journey didn't require that much care, but you've already referenced once how your wife helped you in the decision-making process. But what about the time from the treatment until when you felt like you had beaten it? What role did she play?
Great point. Great question, Bruce. She was very instrumental in terms of emotional support, and my daughter played a great role in that as well. And so, and my father, to be honest with you, because he'd been through this before too. So hearing that support and just saying, don't worry about it. You'll get it. It'll pass. This is good. We're good to go. You just thank God it's not the tougher version of it. that was very helpful to me, be honest with you, in terms of how we proceeded and how I just got back in the game. I didn't worry about it too much after that. I didn't lose any sleep over it, thank goodness. I was very lucky that this is the version of cancer that I got. I'm very happy and blessed by that, but it also scared the hell out of me. So I was, it makes me pay much more attention to taking care of my skin, especially when I'm out in the sun frequently.
Now, caregiving can be stressful just because quantitatively it's a lot of work for the people who are caregiving. At any time, was it stressful for the inner circle around you?
Sure. I mean, the minute you mention the big C to anybody, and especially ones that care about you, they're going to freak out a little bit. I mean, my daughter did, she was like, are you going to die? This and that, so there was, the funny thing is that the patient, I was actually okay with it, but I'd also been talked through it, multiple times with the doctor. And so my wife and my daughter had not been, versed in a lot of those conversations. So I had to spend a lot of time talking with them about it and explaining to them, look, it's not the deadly kind. It can be deadly if you let it go too long, but it's not the deadly kind that's hyper aggressive like melanoma is. So, and here's what the procedure is. And I walked them through it. I spent a good hour walking them through it. And after that, it seemed to calm their nerves a little bit and it de-stressed the situation significantly. Now,
when you reached that point in which you felt that you had beaten this cancer, is there anything that you and your family did to celebrate?
A little cheesecake factory, yes.
or anything that celebrates an anniversary, or are you better off in that sense putting it behind you?
For me, I don't think about it that way. I know for some others that have much more challenging cancers and stuff, it's very important to have those anniversaries, celebrations, and certainly once you're cancer free. For me, I didn't think about it too much. I got lucky, but I didn't take it for granted. I was very smart about it. I keep, sunscreen with me in my travel bag, in my backpack, in my golf bag. I keep it with me wherever I go, just to ensure if I'm going to be out in the sun for any period of time longer than 10 minutes, I'm wearing it. I'm putting it on. So.
Okay, well, that is a great segue to the next thing I was going to ask you about, because you had said that this experience turned you into sort of an ambassador of expanding skin cancer awareness, that sort of thing, with the people you encounter. Could you just elaborate on that a bit?
Sure, and it's more anecdotal, right? So my daughter plays beach volleyball, or has through the majority of her high school career. So you're out in the sun quite a bit. You're in beach locations, and there's plenty of dads that'll come up and this past winter we were in, before this whole COVID-19 thing hit. We were in Dallas and we were in LA for tournaments, and a lot of these folks would come up and ask me, hey, we'd be sitting, just different dads and moms talking about things, and they look at and see the scar on my face, and they kind of look at you strange for a minute, and they say, hey, how's the other guy look? Or did you win the knife fight? And, we kind of laugh and joke about it, but I tell them, very seriously, and I don't get preachy about it. I just say, just put the sunscreen on, especially if you're fair-skinned or from a Nordic region country, if your ancestry is from there, because it's much more prevalent than people think it is. And then you want to catch it early, because it's relatively easy to take care of if you catch it early. It's really a pain in the ass if you get too deep into it and you got to go and start getting chemo and whatever. And basal cell can turn into that, where you have to get the more rigorous treatments. But this relatively easy to take care of and very easy to mitigate on the front end.
Now, Chris, I could be accused of being redundant here, because I want to circle back to something that you've already addressed, but I think that it would be appropriate to address it one more time. Can you just talk about the importance, not just for basal cell, but for any type of cancer, the importance of early detection and positioning yourself for early detection?
Yeah, listen to my whole thing really truly as an athlete too is listen to your body. Your body is going to tell you a lot of stuff, and if you listen to it and you don't ignore it, go and see your physician. Even if you think, don't worry about being considered a hypochondriac or whatever. If you got a pain and it's persistent, go check it out. Make sure that it's not that which you're worried about, because by the way, if you've got it, it ain't going away. It's going to get there, and it only gets worse. And so It's not one of those ones that you just think it away and, oh, okay, I'm going to heal. You need to go and see your physician, and don't be afraid of it. I mean, I'm 6'6", 230 pounds. I'm supposed to be bulletproof, and no, I'm not supposed to fear anything. But that little scraggly little basal cell got my attention quickly, and so I just made an appointment this very morning to go and get my 6-month update and checkup. So I'm going every 6 months now to make sure that I'm still cancer free.
Now, speaking of aftercare, you had earlier mentioned something about breathing exercises. Is there that and anything else you do to, without the aid of a healthcare professional, aid in your aftercare?
Absolutely. So, and again, this is more from the standpoint of just mainly staying fit and limber and active. But I run three to 5 times a week. I do yoga 3 to 5 times a week, usually on the off days when I'm not running, to balance it out, to give me some nice balance. Along with the yoga comes some really good deep breathing techniques. But there's a new character I got introduced to, and he isn't a character, a guy named Wim Hof, W-I-M, and last name is H-O-F, and he's nicknamed the Iceman, and you can look him up on YouTube, and he's a fascinating character. But what he's learned is that you can realkaline the body by these deep breathing techniques and by taking, cold showers. And it doesn't mean that, cold shower in the old sense of it. It actually does have a vascular benefit to the body, or a benefit to the vascular system in the body. And it keeps, everybody knows that if you've been an athlete, you sprain an ankle, you put ice on it, it helps keep the inflammation down better than any 2 Advil will ever be. But that between the 2 techniques, it's really helped me regain a better sense of health, a calmer demeanor in terms of peace and in general. So I would highly recommend you just look him up. He's a funny character. He is a strange guy, but he's a lot of fun to watch and interact with. And again, you can find him you can Google him or look him up on YouTube.
And again, the name is Wim Hof.
Wim Hof, yeah, W-I-M-H-O-F, and he's from the Netherlands, I believe.
Okay.
So
Chris,
he speaks with a funny accent, which makes it even funnier when he's talking.
Okay, Chris, we're about to wrap up. We've already talked about early detection, but if you can imagine that somebody's watching or listening right now who's freshly diagnosed with basal cell carcinoma, over and above early detection, if there's one overarching takeaway, any one point you want to be sure to drive home to that person, what would it be?
It's going to be all right. You've caught it early, and you get it treated, and then you just get regular checkups every 6 months, and everything should be fine.
All right, that is an excellent message, and that, along with early detection, really packs a wallop. So,
absolutely,
Chris, thanks very much. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Enjoyed it, Bruce. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thanks, Chris. And we appreciate your underscoring the importance of early detection. And remember, as you watch or listen, that on the cancer journey, you are not alone, and that we at Cancer Interviews want to be here for you. So until next time, we'll see you down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.